I survived 1 month in Project Zomboid. Firstly, I created a character, called him Jesse Pickleman, and for this challenge, I decided to use these traits. For the negative traits, I chose very underweight, smoker, and weak stomach. And for the positive traits, I chose speed demon, cat eyes, dexterous, fast reader, outdoorsman, fast learner, and strong. With everything set in place, I picked Riverside as my spawn location and hit start. After waking up in the midst of the apocalypse, I got straight to work gathering anything of value in my house. Anything that could help me survive the first few hours and maybe even first few days. I grabbed a kitchen knife and a few tins of food. Nothing else seemed worth taking at this point, so it was time to head outside. I was greeted with my first encounter of the undead, and I'm not ashamed to admit it was a shaky start. I managed to deal with it, and most importantly, I avoided getting bitten within the first 30 seconds of this challenge. One of the zombies had some pretty decent clothing items and also a rifle, which I decided to take, but I wouldn't even think about using this early on into the game. But maybe eventually it would come in useful. So I suited up and carried on scavenging. After finding a can opener in the house across the street, which means I could finally eat when the hunger sets in, I continued down the road to be greeted with more of the undead. This time I felt a bit more confident about taking them on after I got my first 2 kills out of the way, but the sense of being bitten still echoed in the back of my mind, as one wrong move could cost me the whole challenge. After dealing with the nearby zombies, I found the motherload of all tinned goods, but I had no chance of carrying it all, so my priority was trying to find a backpack. After searching the nearby houses, I still hadn't found any sort of backpack, but at the end of the driveway, on the last house on the street, I came across a car, and forgetting just how unforgiving this game can be, I hoped there might be a key nearby, maybe in the house or somewhere close. Unfortunately, the harsh reality set in pretty quickly. There was no key, and I had no choice but to continue on foot for the time being. After a little walk, I came across a small store that I thought would be a good place to look for a backpack of some sort. But after a little while looking round, it was clear that I wasn't going to find one here. But I did manage to find a crowbar that would come in useful, so I took that and continued looking elsewhere. After getting outside the store, I took on these 2 zombies and almost got myself bitten. But thankfully, I came out unharmed and continued to search for the backpack I so desperately needed. After the car park was cleared, I tried my luck again, hoping to find a key for the blue car that was parked up. But again, there was no key. But in the back of the car, I did find a baseball bat, so I will take that as a win. After searching around the car park for a little bit, I finally came across a key laying on the ground. But I had a strong feeling that the car it was for wouldn't be much use, as the car it was actually for was pretty banged up. So for now, the search continued. This is where I thought my luck might finally change. I stumbled across some sort of impound lot. I dealt with the zombies lurking nearby and eventually found a key for a white pickup truck. It was in relatively good condition, but there was one major problem.
It ain't got no gas in it.
Luckily, I found an empty fuel can in the back of another vehicle and got straight to work siphoning whatever fuel I could from nearby cars. After some effort, I finally had enough to get me to my planned base location. So, as the sun set on day 1, I was finally on my way to the only safe location I could think of. I headed north and eventually reached a secluded radio tower, a spot that felt perfect to begin my survival challenge. The location was fenced off and had plenty of storage to start with only one entrance to the base and a long road leading up to it. The chances of any undead sneaking up on me while I slept here were slim. The crowbar I picked up earlier came in handy, since the place was locked up tight. I pried the door open and carefully checked the base for any unwanted guests. Luckily, I only had to deal with one zombie. And so, because I went full retard and forgot there are actually beds in this location, on the night of day 1, I slept in the truck. Day 2 was focused on securing the new base. I started by cutting down trees, turning them into planks, and boarding up every window to make the place as safe as possible. Once that was done, I decided to start leveling up my carpentry skill by dismantling desks and furniture around the base that I didn't see a use for. With the base secure, I ventured out to explore more of the surrounding area. I came across an abandoned neighbourhood, but it held no value to me, so I dismantled some more furniture and then moved on to see what else was around. Eventually I found a small gas station, but it was surrounded by the biggest horde I'd encountered so far in this challenge. With no other option, I got to work taking them out. The circumstances for this fight wasn't ideal. I was hungry and starting to get sleepy. But as I was fighting the horde, I noticed one of the zombies was wearing a bag, so I decided to stay until every zombie was dealt with, or at least until it was safe enough for me to do a bit of scavenging. This was a long and tedious process, as I was becoming more panicked, and my hits wasn't doing a lot of damage. I just had to take my time and hope that I wasn't bitten. After a long 4 hours, I finally cleared the zombies out and got the backpack I needed since day 1. I quickly looted the gas station for food, and then filled up my pickup truck and headed back to base for some well-needed sleep. Day 3 is where I felt my luck was really changing. Apart from the pickup truck showing signs that it doesn't have long left before it completely breaks down, day 3 turned out to be a really good day. After waking up, I decided it was time to venture out a bit more in the hope of finding anything that would prepare me for when the water and the electricity shut down. After a short drive, not far from where I set up base, I came across a storage unit complex containing a fair few storage units, just waiting to be unlocked. Luckily, I found the crowbar on day 1 that gave me the ability to pry all the containers open. I had my priorities backwards as I came across a gun container and just had to check it out before dealing with the zombies that were coming to kill me. After realising I could die at any second if I don't deal with the undead stalking me, I decided to finally get my shit together and make the area secure so I could finally start looting safely. After the horde was dealt with and it was safe enough to go looting, I spent the rest of the day prying open the containers to see if there was anything useful that would help me survive this hellhole. After a while searching, the only real things I found worth mentioning were a few tables for the base, the gun container, and the generator. The generator was the best thing I could have found right now, as it will save me from panicking about it when the power does eventually shut down. Unfortunately, I won't be able to use the generator until I find the magazine for it, but that's a problem for another day. My truck was full, so it was time to head back to the base and come back tomorrow to pick up whatever I left behind. After getting back to the base, I organised it a bit more and started to make it feel like my own. After a quick wash, it was time for some sleep. Day 4 I woke up super early at around 4 AM and headed straight back to the storage units. After securing the generator into the truck, the undead decided to come and say hi, but I was in no mood to stop and talk to them, so I caved their head in with a fire axe and got straight back to filling up the truck with all the loot I thought would be useful. After the unwanted guests were dealt with, I gathered up everything in the gun locker I found yesterday. But considering it's only day 4, I don't think any of this will be getting used anytime soon. But it's always better to have it and not need it, than to need it and not have it. So after almost being molested by a zombie like a guest at a Diddy party, I spent the next few hours opening containers that I didn't have time to open yesterday. The only other thing that happened worth mentioning here is I got my first level up for the axe. But other than that, I continued scavenging for another few hours and returned back to the base to unload everything I collected today. The rest of day 4 was spent unloading the truck and organising the base. After washing all the blood off me and my clothes, day 4 was officially over, and it was time to sleep. Day 5 started relatively good, but little did I know this would be my first bad day in the challenge. It felt like I woke up with bad luck on my side. I started the day with a plan to find a replacement vehicle for the truck I'd been using. The engine was pretty bashed up, and one more hit would total it, leaving me stranded without a vehicle. My first stop was the gas station to fill up some gas cans in case I found a replacement vehicle. By the time I made it to the gas station, the fog had already drifted in, and visibility was poor. A small group of zombies had gathered around the station, and I had to deal with them. With the weather not on my side, I hesitated to even take them on. Part of me wanted to head home and wait for the fog to clear, but I decided to roll with the punches and continue. After dealing with the horde with low visibility, I filled up 2 gas cans and continued my hunt for the next vehicle. I took things slow, making sure not to hit anything. The fog seemed to be getting thicker and thicker, and I couldn't see that far in front of me. I had to be cautious, otherwise this could be my last day alive. Eventually, I came across an ambulance, and I thought I'd check it out for some first aid supplies, but it meant dealing with a few of the undead roaming around here. My luck seemed to change a little after dealing with the zombies, as one of them had the ambulance key on him. But it was just a mirage, as the ambulance's engine was in worse condition than the truck I'm driving. So I took the supplies out the back and continued my search. Further up the road, I stumbled on a farm area with a few houses. The zombies guarding the area needed to be dealt with, so I stood behind a fence and eradicated the problem as they stumbled over the fence. My bad luck returned as I tried to open the window to one of the farmhouses and the alarm triggered. I tried to run back to the fence in preparation, but the horde was already surrounding me. I tried to remain calm and ran away from the fence in the hope that they would all follow me. It worked, and I ran back to the fence to try and kill as many zombies as I could, but remaining calm in a situation like this is easier said than done. I started to rush things, and I got swiped by a crawler. I lost my footing and fell to the ground. My heart stopped, but maybe luck was actually on my side because I got up without a scratch and continued fighting. And in the midst of everything, I leveled up maintenance. After the series of unfortunate events, I decided to steal the TV from the house as the base needed one, and then I decided to leave the area just in case another horde came passing through. Further up the road I found another farmhouse, and just as I thought my luck couldn't get any worse, I tried to open the window to the house and set off yet another alarm. At first it seemed like it wasn't that bad. Maybe the zombies around this area walked to the previous house alarm I triggered, but I was wrong. After a short while they rolled up and the fight was back on. just when I thought things couldn't possibly get any worse, just after I killed the last zombie, I realised a helicopter event happening just down the road. This would attract more zombies to the area, and this wasn't what I needed right now, as exertion was setting in, and soon I would start getting tired again. So my priority was clearing out around the house, because the realisation set in that it would be safer to stay here the night than to try and navigate my way back to the base. So, after dealing with a few more wandering undead, I gave the house one more sweep to check if it was clear, and then chose my bed for the night, making sure the curtains were closed in there in the hope that no zombie would detect me as I slept. Waking up paranoid I'd have another close encounter like yesterday, I woke up on day 6 at 3 AM. Cautious, panicked, and on edge. The overwhelming urge to stay put and not venture out weighed heavily on my shoulders. I needed some time to compose myself. So after a security sweep of the perimeter, I returned to my temporary safe haven and spent the early morning reading my first book. After taking some time to wallow in my own self-pity, it was time to get back to reality and finally focus on what I came out here for. So I went back to the ambulance. Since I couldn't find any other vehicle, this one would have to do. After taking out a few zombies, I hitched up the 2 vehicles and headed back to the base. During the journey, I made a wrong turn and got blocked by 2 smashed up vehicles in the middle of the road. After checking for a key and coming up short, I decided to turn around and head back, but not before dealing with a few more of the undead first. Once they were taken care of, I turned the cars round and continued toward the base. But my bad luck wasn't over yet. The tyre on the ambulance burst, making it impossible to pull the pickup truck any further. I had no choice but to unhitch the vehicles and dump the ambulance for now. After arriving back at the base, I felt relieved to finally be home. I spent the rest of the day unpacking what I had collected and watching the Life and Living TV shows, managing to level up my trapping skills and carpentry. After a wash and finishing unloading what was left in the pickup truck, it was time to get some sleep. After being up since 3 AM, it was safe to say I was due a good night's rest. Knowing that I had officially survived 1 week in the apocalypse of Knox County gave me a burst of hope for day 7. So, day 7 was spent achieving what I had failed to do on day 5 and 6. I headed out, and just past the storage containers was a car park next to a warehouse. If I was going to find a vehicle, this would be my best and closest chance. Once I arrived at the car park, I instantly found a key just lying on the ground, which kind of made up for the 2 days of hell I endured to get here. On the other hand, if I'd have just checked here on day 5, I wouldn't have PTSD right now. I moved everything from the pickup truck into the new red car, and I said goodbyes to our first vehicle. It got us this far, and I'm thankful for it, but times are hard, and the pickup truck was becoming a danger to my survival. Greed got the best of me, and I wanted to push my luck to see if I could find any other keys lying around the area, preferably for a van with a good amount of storage. So, I got to work herding the vast amount of zombies in the area to clear up the car park enough for me to have a look around for the keys. Once Once the area was clear, it was time to search. The first few cars I checked were all locked, and not being able to hotwire anything means these vehicles were useless to me. After a little while, I struck gold and managed to find a key for a van in the glove box, but it needed fuel, so after filling it up with the fuel cans I bring out with me, it was ready for the road. As I didn't want to overstay my welcome, I hitched the 2 vehicles up and headed back to base. After dropping the van off, I headed to the gas station to fill up some fuel cans for the new vehicles. On the way there, I came across another ambulance and looted it for medical supplies. I filled up the fuel cans and made my way back to the base, making a quick stop to pick up the ambulance we ditched on day 6 and finally returning it back to base. After unloading and sorting out the base a little, day 7 was officially over and it was time to rest. On day 8 I woke up to a cooking show, so I took a bit of time to watch it and leveled up my cooking skill. Afterwards I spent half the morning organising the base, and that's when I realised the food supplies were getting low. So after filling up the van with some fuel and doing my best Ryan Dunn impression, I headed back into town for a day of collecting supplies. I returned to the small shop I found on day 1, and after dealing with the horde of the undead that decided to follow me, I headed into the store and emptied every shelf with food on it. While I was there, I also picked up any tools I could use in the future and found a machete, which is my favourite weapon in the game. After looting the store, I went across the car park to break into another shop and looted that, prioritising canned food since it will never go out of date or spoil. After emptying the shelves and throwing everything into the back of the van, I continued further into town. I couldn't just drive past the police station without checking it out. After killing the undead and testing out the new machete, I headed inside. Just before entering, I killed a zombie that fell out of a window that had a full bomb suit on, so I had to take it. I threw it in the van and went back to the police station. Once inside, I killed a zombie that held the key to the building, which made looting a hell of a lot easier. So thank you for that. When I made it to the gun lockers, there wasn't much inside, but it made up for that with what was actually inside there. I found a sledgehammer, and that was the best find I could have asked for. After taking what I could from the station, I grabbed more food from the gas station and headed back to base with a van full of supplies. Once I got back, it was pretty late, so I decided to just sleep. Day 9 was boring. I spent the whole day unloading everything I collected yesterday, and by the time I'd finished, it was too late to do anything, so I spent the rest of the night reading. So, let's move on. Day 10. The day that this challenge almost came to an end. Waking up, I decided to head to another town to find even more supplies. Today was the day I really was aware that eventually the electricity and the water will soon shut off, and I didn't exactly feel like I was prepared enough. So I made the decision to head to another town that is located nearby. It's a relatively small town, so my guess that it wouldn't have been that populated before the outbreak, so in theory, I shouldn't have any issues scavenging around there. Maybe I'd have to kill a few zombies, but that would be it. Well, that's not what happened. As I made my way there, before I even got to the town, it was evidently clear that I really underestimated the challenge of this place. As I got closer to the destination, more and more zombies appeared, making it near impossible to drive on the road. I tried herding them all up, but there was just too many of them. The zombies just kept coming, and eventually surrounded the van. I tried to remain calm as I tried to move the van off the grass, but it was struggling to move any faster than 5 miles an hour. The zombies pressed against the van, and it wasn't helping matters. This generally felt like the end of the road for me. But by some miracle, the van managed to reverse, and eventually got back on the road. I got out there as quick as possible, and ditched the idea of going to that town and tried to think of some other places I could scavenge. So, after a failed plan, I returned to familiar territory, defeated and overwhelmed by the amount of zombies. I couldn't help but think what other towns would be like when I do eventually get to them. But that was a problem for another day. For now, I spent the rest of the day scavenging the campsite near the gas station I've been using, and kinda got a stroke of luck as the store there had been turned into a survivalist house. As I headed upstairs, I thought it was all over when this happened to me. But luckily, I think my clothing saved my life. After clearing the building, I had a look around and found a fridge full of melee weapons. This wouldn't have been where I stored my weapons, but you gotta do what you gotta do in an apocalypse. I found a few tins of food and then another container full of melee weapons. It was safe to say I wouldn't be running out of machetes anytime soon. I threw the weapons in the back of the van and then proceeded to loot the store for more food supplies. Once everything was loaded, I decided to stay here the night. Today had taken its toll on me, the constant fighting, the close calls, and the overwhelming reality that this challenge could have ended. All I wanted to do now was sleep and hope that tomorrow would be kinder. Day 11 started off by me fat-thumbing my keyboard and shouting to every possible zombie in the vicinity, causing me to go full panic mode right off the bat. So I made my way downstairs to evaluate the situation and stand my ground. Thankfully, there were only 2 zombies to deal with, so I de-escalated the situation by burying my machete into the skulls of the undead. Once the zombies were dealt with, I decided to head back to the base and unpack everything I collected. I would love to say something exciting happened after that, but I spent the whole day in the base, organising, demolishing, and more organising. After one long day of organising, thankfully, it was time to sleep. Day 12 was an early start for me. I woke up with the plan to find a neighbourhood and start dismantling furniture to level up my carpentry skill. That was until I did my best Ryan Dunn impression, again, and absolutely obliterate the new van. So I changed today's plan and started looking for a new vehicle. Just down the road from the base, I came across some sort of gated area that caught my interest and decided to check it out. I got out to take care of a few zombies and leveled up my long blade skill before following the road further up. I came across a car park with a few vehicles and I found a key on the ground and I hoped it was for the blue pickup that I saw. But this game hates me, and unfortunately it was for a white banged up car. At this point I had no choice but to take it. That's when the zombies noticed I was there, so it was time to get to killing. After finishing my rampage, I checked the remaining cars in the area, just praying that the white car wasn't the only vehicle I could drive. After a short while of looking, I had no luck, so I filled up the piece of shit car, siphoned off the remaining fuel in the van, and headed further up the road until I came across the country club. I decided to have a look around, and in true Brummy style, I stole the water dispenser, a few bucks, and some food. Then I made my way out the back and found another car park, where I eventually found a key to a flatbed truck just sitting in the ignition. Not realising how loud this thing was, I stupidly started it up to check the engine condition. It wasn't great, but this was the best thing I could have found right now. Instead of doing the smart thing and just driving away, I decided to stay and fight the oncoming zombies. After a while, the heat seemed to be getting too much, so I made a dash for the new truck and got the hell out of there, making sure to pick up the water dispenser before I left, because you know, priorities. Once I was back at the base, I organised a bit more, washed my clothes, and then I went to bed naked, as I had no way of drying them off. I spent the entirety of day 13 reading. Absolutely thrilling gameplay. Day 14 was a little more exciting as I woke up super early and spent the first few hours organising the base more, as you can never be too organised in an apocalypse. Once it started to get light outside, I decided today was the day I found houses near the base so I could dismantle furniture and try to level up my carpentry skill. After a little drive, I found my first house to destroy. I took apart radios, sofas, bedside tables, beds, and even doors. Basically anything that I could dismantle, I destroyed. After spending most of the day doing that, I started to get tired at around 3 PM. This wasn't ideal, my sleeping pattern was starting to get a little AWOL, so I found a secure room and slept in the house. I woke up just after 11 PM to a helicopter event, which is going to make the next transition into day 15 really janky, so enjoy that when midnight hits. And so, because I couldn't sleep anymore, I decided to get in my car to find another house to dismantle. A little further down the road, I chose my next target. A small little farmhouse that didn't seem that populated with the undead. Once I swept the area to make sure it was safe, I headed inside to find a few residents that wasn't too happy about me coming into their house to destroy the furniture. So, I had to deal with the situation the only way I knew how. Once midnight hit, it was officially day 15, and to be honest, the thought of dismantling furniture for another day really didn't appeal to me. So after looting the small farmhouse, I went on a looting run. I headed to an area closer to the base and drove through the main high street just to scope out how many zombies there actually were there, as eventually I will need to loot there. There didn't actually seem like a lot of zombies, but there was enough zombies in the area to make it a daunting challenge when I do decide to loot here. Just outside of town, I found a few small houses with some vehicles parked up, and I wanted to see if I could find a key. But unfortunately, the keys were nowhere to be seen, so I spent the rest of the morning scavenging the houses for any supplies I could find. At this point, I really started to feel the effects of being alone in the apocalypse. I felt like I was losing my mind a little. So, I went on a little killing spree to clear a bit of the area and leveled up my long blade again. After the killing spree, I returned to the base to organise more. This was really starting to get tedious now. After almost 2 weeks into the apocalypse and my mental state seemed to be worsening, I just felt like all I was doing was looting, then organising, surviving, and repeat. My mind started to fog and I questioned even progressing further onto this challenge. I felt alone. Would it be easy to just go out in a blaze of glory, head to Louisville, and take out as many of the undead as I could before the inevitable happened? Things were going so well, yet I couldn't shift the dark cloud that was above me. So I just decided to sleep and hoped that tomorrow would give me a boost that I so desperately needed right now. Waking up on day 16 to find the TV stations have officially stopped broadcasting made matters worse. If it wasn't bad enough I was alone in the apocalypse, now there wasn't even background noise to even attempt to preoccupy my mind. The morning got worse as I went outside to discover that a thick fog had rolled over the base, disrupting any plans I had today. So, yet again, I worked on organising the base more. Eventually, the fog cleared, and I jumped in my car and headed anywhere that wasn't here. I found myself just outside of the nearby town, in a neighbourhood with a plan of maybe dismantling more furniture to level up my carpentry more. So after dealing with a few zombies lurking around and getting lucky yet again and almost being bitten, I secured the house, closing every line of sight I could, and got to work destroying the furniture. After spending the rest of the day doing that, I decided to spend the night in the house so I didn't have to travel back here tomorrow. After waking up on day 17, I decided to take a sneaky look in the shop across the road. Once there, I realised that all the fresh food had now gone rotten, and it reminded me of how far I've actually come to get to this point. Who knew that this would be the inspiration I needed for me to keep pushing on and surviving? After I was done looking in the shop, I headed outside to kill a few zombies. Once that was taken care of, I thought I'd check the black pickup truck that was parked outside to see if there was a key, and to my surprise, I found a key in the glove box. After taking it back to the red car I arrived in, I hitched them both up and made my way back to the base. The pickup struggled to pull the red car, and it was a slow journey home. I noticed the fuel gauge was going down at a pretty rapid pace. Halfway home, the truck officially ran out of fuel, and of course, it happened in a terrible spot. My only option now was to get out the safety of the vehicle and go out on foot to fill up the truck. Zombies were everywhere, and filling up the truck quickly became a secondary objective. My primary objective now was just to survive. I tried to fight off the zombies hunting me down, but it didn't take long for me to realise I had bitten off way more than I could chew. For every zombie I managed to take down, 2 more seemed to come out of nowhere, and after my rotten fruit epiphany, I really wasn't in the mood to get bit. With no other choice, I decided to herd the horde away from the vehicles, leading them as far as I could before sneaking out of their line of sight. Once I was clear, I headed back up the road to deal with any stragglers still lingering around the cars. When the coast finally seemed clear, I siphoned the fuel from the red car and filled up the black pickup truck, all the while hoping that no zombies would sneak out the tree line and take me by surprise. Once I had enough fuel to comfortably get out of the area, I made the slow getaway and continued toward the base. As I got to the path that led to the base, I unhitched the red car for now, with the plan of coming back tomorrow, as towing the 2 vehicles was really slow. Once I was back at the base, I realised I still had a few hours left, so I filled the flatbed truck up with the empty fuel cans and headed to the fuel station to fill them all up so I could fill every car I own up, so running out of fuel in the middle of a horde would never happen again. After I got back to the entrance of the base again, I tried to hitch up the red car thinking the truck would pull it a bit faster, but it turns out it pulls just as slow as the black pickup truck, so I ditched the red car yet again, ready for me to run down there tomorrow. After shattering both headlights of the truck and almost completely destroying the whole thing by hitting a tree, I actually made it back to the base and I went to sleep. Day 18 started with me running my ass off down the track that connects the base to the outside world to retrieve the red car I abandoned last night. This took the entire morning and was the only eventful thing I did all day. The rest of the day was spent tidying up the base, getting rid of all the empty tin cans I'd accumulated over the last 18 days and stacking them in a corner. I also made some improvements to the bedroom, adding a TV stand so the TV wasn't just dumped on the floor. I spent the remainder of the day organising and emptying the vehicles. Once the afternoon turned into evening, I read a book until it was time to sleep. Day 19. The day the power shut down. So remember on day 3 when I said I needed a magazine to use a generator and it was a problem for another day? Well, I sort of forgot about that. And now the power was out and I had no way of getting electricity into the base. So I headed into the depths of town to search for a generator magazine. When I got into town, the number of zombies was daunting, but I pushed forward. I headed toward the library, thinking it was my best chance. I herded most of the undead away from the area and finally parked outside. One of the zombies managed to scratch me, so I patched myself up and looped around the back of the library to lose some of the heat. After clearing the remaining zombies out the front, I broke into the library and started searching for the magazine I desperately needed. But after searching every shelf, there was still no sign of it. My only other option was a school around the corner. It had a small library in it, so I headed there, completely unaware of the nightmare that waited for me. After dealing with a small group of the undead outside, I entered the school. It seemed clear, so I took a moment to eat some food. And that's when everything turned to shit. The undead started pouring around the corners, forcing me to fight them one by one. I was so focused on the zombies in front of me that I forgot to check behind me. Suddenly, I was surrounded in a hallway and had to force my way through the horde. I ran through the corridor and luckily found an exit. Once outside, I started taking out the zombies flooding outside the school. Slowly but surely, I made my way back inside, clearing the hallway, and eventually reaching the library. But after searching every shelf, there was still no sign of the magazine. So, defeated and out of options, I made my way back to the base. I went straight to bed, feeling like a failure. Waking up on day 20 depressed and useless over the failure to find the generator book yesterday, I spent the day reading whatever I had collected yesterday, wallowing in my own self-pity. But this day of reading does come with a twist. I decided to load the books I'd finished into the ambulance and heard a familiar sound. It was the whirring of a generator. But of course, I hadn't turned one on yet and realised it was a generator that had been part of the base all along. And upon closer inspection, I had an option to take generator magazine. My eyes lit up and I couldn't believe it at first. But after reading the magazine, it finally sank in. I had finally unlocked the knowledge I needed and it had been here since day 1. I was finally able to connect the generator to the base and restore power. After that surprising discovery, I continued reading until it was time to sleep.
What's 9 plus 10?
21.
You stupid.
Day 21 was a total write-off. The fog was too thick to leave the base, and I didn't want to risk getting bitten so close to the finish line. So I spent the day reading and working on my mechanic skill. Waking up on day 22, the fog was still lingering, so I spent the morning reading. Once the fog cleared, I decided to head to the storage units again to get a generator to put at the gas station so I could finally pump fuel again. On the way there, I pulled off my best Princess Diana impression and completely wrecked the vehicle. After dealing with the undead, I had to walk back to the base to grab another vehicle. By the time I got back to the base, it was a bit late, but I still headed to the storage units to grab the generator. After rummaging around, I secured the generator, but decided to sleep in the storage unit, since it was too late to make it back safely. On day 23, I forgot to press record for the first half of the day. Luckily, nothing worth mentioning happened, just waking up, driving back to the base, and crashing yet another truck just outside the entrance to the base. After getting my final vehicle, I grabbed the generator from the truck and headed to the gas station. Once there, I hooked the generator up and let the fuel flow again. After filling up the fuel cans, I returned to the base and went to sleep. I wish I could say day 24 was exciting, but I'm sorry, I spent the whole day reading. And on day 25, I also spent the whole day reading. Day 26 started with a plan to find a new vehicle, and my first stop was the mechanic shop just outside of town. Unsurprisingly, I found nothing. No key, no luck. I eventually wandered into a gated community that looked promising and found a red Land Rover, but again, no key. A little further down the road, I spotted another red car that seemed to be in decent condition, but there was a catch. Way more zombies than I anticipated. After taking a few out, I finally had a chance to check the car, and by some miracle, the key was just sitting in the ignition. So after clearing the area, I added fuel to the car and got it running, but I wasn't happy with the storage space. So I spent the rest of the evening driving around, checking out every vehicle I could find, hoping for something better. Eventually though, I had to call it a night. I took shelter in a house and got some sleep. Day 27 started with disappointment, as I wanted to bring a microwave back to the base, but the car was full. Typical. I spent the morning searching around the farming area, hoping to find something worthwhile, but no luck. On the way back to the base, I came across a tank, and of course I had to check for a key, but spoiler alert, it was locked, with no key in sight. A little further down the road, I found an abandoned warehouse that looked like it could be an amazing base in the future, but for now, that wasn't priority. As I turned back round, I noticed a boarded up house, and you know what that means. So, I spent the rest of the day trying to break into the survivalist house, killing the zombies inside, and looting whatever I could find. Once everything was loaded into the car, I headed back to base, did a little organising, and then I went to sleep. Waking up on day 28 to absolute torrential rain, I decided not to risk catching a cold, so I spent the entire day sorting out the base and organising even more. Thrilling, I know. On day 29, with just one day to go before completing the challenge, I thought it would be a great idea to go back to that town that nearly killed me last time. Why? Because I'm an idiot. But also there's a military supply shop there. But honestly, was it worth the risk? Probably not. After waiting for the fog to clear, I made a quick stop at the gas station to fill up, then headed back to the infamous Death Road. Sure enough, I ran into a massive horde, got scared, and ran away like a little bitch. When I finally got back to the base, I read a Carpentry book, leveled up to level 2, and then went to bed. So ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it this far, congratulations. Day 30 officially arrived. I survived 1 whole month in the zombie apocalypse, and it feels like I'm just getting started. As for the final day, it was pretty anticlimactic. I spent the day driving around looking for a new vehicle, and realised that the zombie population outside my base's area was absolutely insane. If I survive into month 2, it's going to be a real challenge. After a day of fruitless searching, I had to settle for the red car I already had. And as it got late, I took shelter in a little farmhouse. After shutting all the curtains, I went to sleep.
But wait! There's more! Hang on to your seat, baby! Cause this one's a screamer!
And so, as nothing much happened on day 30, and it really was anticlimactic, I thought I would end this video with a bonus 2-day special. It really didn't seem right that I ended this video on day 30, as so little happened. I needed an end goal, something to tie this whole video together, an achievement to end on. So, on day 31 and 32, I made it my mission to get to the town I had tried and failed multiple times to get to throughout this video. But this time I wasn't going to go down Death Road. I was going to flank around and head into town for the back route, and eventually loot the military supply shop. This seems like the only fitting way to end this challenge, as it has caused me the most grief. So I made my way through the back roads in the early hours of the morning, travelling down roads full of the undead. The uncertainty of whether going round the back way would even be the better option grew with every mile I drove, and every horde of the undead I saw, but I kept pushing onwards. The minutes turned into hours, but eventually I successfully got to the town, but I had no time to stop. I couldn't celebrate, as the population of zombies here was overwhelming, to say the least. I spent a while herding up as many zombies as I could, and taking them away from the military supply shop. For such a small town, this place had so many zombies lurking around every corner, and there was no way I was heading into the shop without luring at least some of the undead away. I looped around the area multiple times before heading back to the military shop. Once the hordes outside the shop looked manageable, the fight was on. I started thinning out the remaining zombies in the area on foot. This was a long process, and I really did take my time with it, trying to make it my goal not to alert more than 3 zombies at a time, so I didn't get overrun. Once the undead were taken care of, it was time to go into the military shop. Once I was finally in the shop, I was greeted with as much armour, weaponry and guns I only dreamed of up until this point. My only issue now was that the red car I brought didn't have enough space to fit everything I wanted to take back with me, and that's when I started looking for a vehicle in the car park across the road. And by some miracle, I found a key to a pretty big pickup truck, and after filling it up with gas, it was officially mine. I pushed my luck even more by looting the pharmacy before I headed back to the military shop. And once I arrived back at the military shop, I started to take anything I found useful, like armour, clothing, and of course, all the ammo and guns I could fit into the pickup truck. After everything was packed away in the vehicle, there was only one more thing to do, and that was to head home. The journey back home mainly consisted of me weaving in and out of the mass amount of zombies drowning the road, but eventually, familiar territory appeared, and it was a relieving sight to see the base again. And the overwhelming sense of achievement consumed me. There wasn't much left to do other than head to bed and sleep, knowing that after surviving 1 month in this game and achieving the task of getting to the military supply shop, I was all set for another month in this game, if I choose to do another video. If you made it this far, honestly, thank you. This video took a lot of time and effort, and the fact that you watched all of it means a lot. I'm really sorry for keeping you waiting this long for an upload, but projects like this take a lot of time to fit into my real life schedule. So thank you again, and until next time, goodbye.